Stanfield, Director of Guest Services.
This is the team we depend on when we are planning, when we're making decisions. I value their input. There's a great deal of industry experience as well as specific Mount Bachelor experience. We look at our management team as this group of people as well as our year-round and seasonal managers and supervisors. We do an awful lot to try to keep everybody informed and have everybody collaborate to help us come up with our plans. So you're going to hear that as a theme from us tonight. So let's jump right into a quick presentation. So we want to try to set the record straight on a few things tonight. First and foremost, we are locally managed. That means this team and the people that work for them make the plan. I have worked for 2 publicly traded ski companies, and I can tell you that in those cases, I was handed what our goals were going to be and expected to get there, even when they weren't realistic plans. We create the plan at Mount Bachelor. We don't get handed a number. That's something that people need to know. Our relationship is very simple. I'm the only person that sits on the executive committee at Powder. All of the general managers of the other Powder resorts, along with the chief operating officer of Powder, the finance officer, and John Cumming, who's the chairman of the board and majority shareholder of the company, make up that team. And we talk about what we're going to do related to all resorts before anybody starts making their own plan. We get together 4 times a year at quarterly planning meetings to talk about the global business that is Powder and our individual ski areas. I report to the Chief Operating Officer, Herwig Demshar. Some of you may remember him from a few years ago before I arrived. He spent a great deal of time here. And then I also have a dotted line directly to the owner. So that's how it works. And the rest of what I get in terms of information and guidance from Powder, this is the group that we put together our annual budgets and operating plans and execute them. Our decision making is filtered by our core values. And I'm just going to rip through these. I'm not going to spend a whole heck of a lot of time, but whenever we evaluate what it is we think we need to do or how we're going to do it, we filter it through these core values. We're thoughtful. We don't enter into anything without thinking about it and making sure we understand all the consequences. We're enduring. We want to be here for a very, very long time. That means that we do things not on a quarterly basis or a yearly basis. We're thinking decades in advance. We are financially disciplined. I can't take that back. We intend to succeed, and that means we will succeed financially.
Hard spend.
Entrepreneurial. That means that we're innovative. We're going to act like this is our own business. We think of the money that we spend, which is significant, and the money we earn is going to be our own. And if we do that, we're going to make the right choices. And we're environmental minded, and we define that through being committed to the winter sports. We want to be a good steward of the land, that we have the privilege of having an operating agreement with the Forest Service. And we want to make sure we practice environmentally sound practices up on the mountain. Those are the filters. Anytime we look at what we want to do, what we think we could do, what the opportunities are, that's the way we do it. Under Powder ownership since 2001, we are stable. We are financially sustainable. That can't be said for a lot of ski companies. I can speak to that personally. I have worked for several ski companies that no longer exist. Ongoing, we are what I call a net winner in capital investment within Powder. If there are any finance people here, any finance-oriented people, square me away if you don't think this is coming out the right way. This team is held accountable for our operating income. What we spend, revenues we generate, cost of goods. At the end of the day, that drives your net operating income. Below that line comes things like depreciation, amortization, tax. Those are the things that this team doesn't control. When you take those factors into account and talk about real cash left in your jeans at the end of the year, and how much of that cash gets put back into Mount Bachelor. Mount Bachelor, in fact, is a winner getting money from the other powder resorts, contrary to a lot of the chatter that's out there online. In 11 years, $30 million has been spent on capital, equipment, projects. That's more than what would be left in Mount Bachelor's jeans over those 11 years when you talk about a cash basis.
Where's your employees up there? That's what I want to know. What do they have in kitchen?
Yeah, and let's be very, very, very clear about the conduct in this meeting. If it goes sideways, it's over, okay? And even if it's one or two people, there are a lot of people here taking the time to be here to hear this. Let's respect everybody's rights. When you look at what we've done recently, we've spent a lot of money lately on equipment and infrastructure, upgrading it, replacing it. It's expensive. When you look at things like a snow blower, I've learned a lot about snow removal since I've moved here. It takes 2 years from the time you order a snow blower, like the big rotary equipment that we operate. It takes 2 years from the time you order it until it's delivered. The big red that we have up in the parking lots most days costs $465,000, that one piece of equipment. And then you look at what we've done with lifts. I'm sure we're going to talk a lot more about that. We've spent a lot of money in the last couple of years on our lifts, upgrading and bringing them up to the latest, greatest digital technology. Water systems, our power system gets a lot of attention. We're on an island up there. It's 11 miles of tree-lined overhead line. So we spend a great deal of time and energy evaluating that and spending money on it. I don't want to spend a great deal of time here because everybody here is pretty well versed in what the operating conditions are up at Mount Bachelor. Just a couple of quick shots from this season of a pretty typical day getting the lifts going. The weather's the same as it's ever been. It's just a matter of when different types of storms roll in and to the magnitude of impact that they've had. This year's been tougher than the prior two. Next year might be better. It's all the same weather, it's just a matter of which year it is. Some of the stuff that we've done differently in the last few years, our morning operating plan. And we have a very detailed, scheduled approach to opening lifts. This year, we had a problem with that darn lift because the electric motor started to fail. We cleaned up the electric motor, started it up again. The clean, efficient, updated electric motor isn't running well with the old analog drive. That's why it's been running on diesel. And as what we would call a lift whose terrain is served by Northwest, midweek, we've taken that out of the operating plan. It does save us money, yes, but it also reduces operating time on the oldest lift on the mountain. Call us bad for doing that, or call us prudent. It's the right thing to do when you go back to that list of how we filter decision making. If we're going to be enduring, if we're going to be financially disciplined, those are the types of decisions that on occasion have to be made. When you look at lifts that operate not impacted by weather, so when a lift is cleared to be opened by ski patrol and lift maintenance, the moment it opens, we record any and all downtime. So this is where we are year-to-date with our lifts. The first column says how many minutes of downtime we've had. The second column is how many minutes that lift has been operating season to date. The final column is the percentage of reliability. If you can see, I don't know if everybody can see in the back, but every one of those lifts has been operating 99% or more once it's been open to the public. Again, this does not take into account when we've scheduled a lift and haven't been able to open it due to the weather. On the summit lift, that takes into account if it opened like it did on Saturday around 1 o'clock. That would be from 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock that day, and that number of minutes. So I'm going to go through a few things that aren't really that connected now, but just for a point of reference and to get some facts out there. This is a slide that shows how much lift revenue Mount Bachelor captures per visitor, including lift tickets and season pass revenue, compared to the Pacific Northwest, which is right in the middle, and then the average of all U.S. ski areas, the big ones and the little ones, all combined. This is from the annual economic survey that is completed by over 400 ski areas in the United States. It's hard, again, to see, I apologize, but if we use the average for the United States ski areas as 100%, Mount Bachelor is about 84% of the national average. That means that for every dollar that the average ski area captures in lift income, Mount Bachelor captures 84 cents. If you compare us to everybody in the Pacific Northwest, that's about 83 cents. So we're about the average in the Pacific Northwest. Again, just for perspective, putting it in perspective for people. Here's one that may be of interest. This is an apples-to-apples look at actual expense as a percentage of that lift revenue, okay? So if you look at how many dollars are spent on these particular operating areas at Mount Bachelor versus the Pacific Northwest versus the U.S. average. So I started with grooming, which is the purple. That's, again, we're using spatial comparisons here because I'm not going to share our proprietary operating income here. But on a proportional basis, you can see in grooming, we're about average with other areas in the Pacific Northwest, and that we both spend more than the average ski area as a percentage of our overall lift revenue. The next one is the big one. That's lift maintenance. We spend significantly more than other areas in the Pacific Northwest and the average for the U.S. ski industry. I put snowmaking up here because in other parts of the world, Back east, snowmaking is a huge driver of what it does to the average. We don't really make any snow, very little here in the Northwest. What we do have is a snow removal question. So you can see that we are significantly higher than both the Northwest and the average ski area. Some of you may have seen this. We've had this on our Facebook page for quite a while. Just to set the record straight, the pre-season, full season, adult seasons pass price, going back to 1994, anything in red was with the prior ownership group. Anything in blue has been under Powder's ownership. Not a whole heck of a lot to say. I think visually it's pretty clear. Okay, now we're going to shift gears and get directly into the heart of why I felt it was important we hold a public meeting. When we came out with our spring operating plan, we heard the uproar. So that's why it was important that we get everybody together. So for the record, here's a summary of where we've been. Or excuse me, I'll start with what we're proposing as we go forward. So we propose we go with the 4-day operating plan in May, Thursday through Sunday. Anybody with a midweek season pass is going to be able to use it all 4 days, including the weekends. Spring hours, we have been doing, as I've been told, since the 1980s. And the reason for shortening the end of the day is the snow gets gooey. It turns into glue under certain conditions. And it happens more and more frequently the later in the year you go. And this breakout, whether we run from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. or 8 a.m. to 1 p.m., will be determined by what kind of spring we're having. If it's going to be a really warm, sunny spring, the snow is going to become glue-like sooner. So we'll open earlier and get those same number of operating hours. If it's been like what I've seen since I've moved here, it's still been winter-like a lot of the time. So if that happens, we'll stick with the 9 to 2. This was interesting. I saw these come into this presentation a little late, but I was reminded that if you go back into the 1980s, the spring operating plan had this amount of terrain open from the Sunrise and the Summit lift. In the, and again, I don't know because I don't read it up here, but sometime in the 1990s through the early 2000s, the operating plan shifted to operate Pine Martin and Summit, which opened up a little bit more terrain, and especially a little bit more of the steep terrain over here off of Pine Martin. If you look at what we've been doing the last couple of years, primarily because of the impact that the youth market and terrain parks has had on our spring business, we're operating Skyliner now as well. And that's a big part of it, but the other big part of it is now with Skyliner, we can run the East Catch Line, and the Forest Service has allowed us to create a spring catch line that comes in and cuts across the bottom of Sunrise and allows you to get back to Skyliner. So I think, if I'm remembering correctly, this is providing us over 2,000 acres of skiable terrain in the springtime. A lot of ski areas don't even have that amount of terrain when they're in the height of the season. Again, for the record, here is when Mount Bachelor's final day of operation has been, all the way back to 1974. Obviously, all but 1 year, it looks like, we got into May. A lot of years, we've gone beyond the 1st of June. And for the record, that's about 8 times we've operated through into July. It's happened. It used to be part of the normal plan. Sometimes things change, but to keep it in perspective, it's not like it happened every single year. It happened a lot, but not every year. When you look at why we chose a Thursday through Sunday operating plan this May, we went and looked at the last 6 years where we have very strong operating data to see how many visits we were getting per day. And it's pretty clear that, we got a couple of days that we're lucky to get to 400 visitors. We're focused on getting people at a time when we've got a pretty good chance to see those numbers a little bit bigger. Some other points of reference when we get into the area of what the mountain does for the community, and we've just listed a few key things. We're focused on being a family mountain. We've done a lot over the last few years to try to make sure that we have products and programs and pricing that clearly show our commitment to families and kids. We also believe in creating the next generation of skiers and snowboarders. So we focus a lot of energy on beginner programs. Bachelor.com. We solicit what are called guest expressions in writing from folks at the mountain. A lot of our email addresses seem to be out there, so we'll take the feedback any way we can get it. We're just trying to make sure that it can be of a constructive nature. I always like to receive feedback that also is actionable, things that are feasible for us to try to correct or attempt to correct. So those are my closing statements. I think now we can move directly into taking some questions.